Good morning. I am Geneva Sambor. I'm the grade 6 English teacher from Plymouth Elementary School, and I am going to present some G Suite Google Apps highlights for you today, and hopefully be able to help you launch your school year with the Google Apps. And I will try to make this as quick as possible, although I was given an hour-long time slot, I'm sure, to answer questions for you. I'm going to have an alternative way for your questions to be asked and answered. Unfortunately, I'm unable to be there in person, but I will be presenting my screen now. We're on Google Meet. Before I do anything, though, I do want to present my entire screen to you so that I can show you. Hopefully this will work. It might not. That's technology, though. So I can show you some updates to Google Meet. So I presented my entire screen for you. Google Meet has a couple of great updates, which, as many of you might know, we want to video conference with students sometimes or each other. So a couple of things that is added for Google Meet, you can add attachments now. So you could, through Google Calendar, which is a whole other topic, but through Google Calendar, you can actually add an attachment to an event. And if you add on Google Meet conferencing, you can access that attachment right here in your meeting. So you don't have to sift through any emails or anything like that. A second update for Google Meet is there's this turn on captions, although that might have already been there. However, that's helpful sometimes for students and for other staff and adults. See, this is showing my speech as I'm going through this meeting. And I think that really helps sometimes during a video conference. The third update I'd like to show you is right here by your clock. There is now a chat with everyone tool. And that may or may not be helpful to you depending on how you'd like to use Google Meet. However, this allows message sending to be done. That might be helpful if you have students mute themselves and if you want them to be chatting back and forth, or if you're in a meeting and don't want to interrupt. I know that it can be hard not to talk over each other during a video meeting. So this is another good option, and definitely an update because Google Meet wanted to sort of be a little bit up to speed with Zoom. So Google has sent out these updates. How many times did I say the word update? So I'm going to navigate to my presentation here. This presentation is a general overview of the G Suite apps and how they can help teachers and what worked well for me. The date on the presentation is incorrect. I did this presentation in another location on August 3rd. Hopefully you'll forgive me for that. So I'm going to go through about 5 things with you today. I did already touch on Google Meet. I will touch on it one more time before I move on to Google Classroom. Okay, and then I'm going to move through Google Calendar, which is a really important tool for you to be using as teachers, and it can help students stay organized and stay on track with their assignments and with their meetings with you. I'm going to show you quite a lot about Google Slides that you may or may not already know. And then there is a newer app in our SAU that Google has launched for Jamboard. And I'll briefly show you Google Drawings as well. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to show you that if I were there in person, I would definitely do this with you. But as you can see on my slide when I am scrolling, hopefully you can see this toolbar here. There is an option for Q&A. And on my side, as a presenter, it looks like this. So I have a start new Q&A, and I can click to present. I'm already in present mode. I can see what's been said already, the slide I just had, and what's up next, right? That's really helpful for me as a presenter. And if I start a new Q&A, essentially you can do this with students and their Chromebooks, and they could type in their questions during your presentation. So if I start a new Q&A, then a link appears on the screen above, and that is the link that you would give your students or your staff, however you want to use this feature. And they can actually join with a mobile device. They can join with a Chromebook as long as they type in that URL. As with most technology use, there might be mistakes. There might be errors. Don't panic when that happens. Just go with it and just ask your audience or your students to give you feedback on whether or not something is or is not working. Try your best to troubleshoot and move on, I guess. Sometimes these things don't work because they are all sort of based in the web, right? So they're not programs downloaded onto a computer. So there can be glitches, and I'm sure that you've encountered that before. But on my side of it, if people join that link, then a question will appear right there. So I'm going to actually demonstrate this. I'm going to join with my phone, right? I'm going to type in the web address. So I need to minimize that for a minute. Slides dot. Don't go on it right now because it won't be live by the time you see this, but Google/W, excuse my narrating as I'm doing this. And it is case sensitive when you're joining the link. So I do need to capitalize these 4 letters here in the link and go from there. So I'm going to go, and on my phone, it asks me if I want to open up in Google Chrome. Yes, I do. And I'll be able to show you what shows up on my laptop. So I'm going to ask a question. How can I use Q&A with students? Right? And I have the option also to check the Ask Anonymously button. So this is really helpful, especially if you want that feature. So I'm going to submit that question. And right now it says, I just asked a question. It says my name. And I actually, if someone else is on that question side of it on their device, they can like or dislike my question, which could go horribly wrong, depending on how you use that. But if I like the question as a presenter and I want to address it, what I wanted to show you is that you can actually click present. And then it appears like this. How can I use Q&A with students? And I can address that specific question, and then I can move on. So Q&A is a really great tool. I recommend using it. And then I can, there we go, I can press hide again. So I will turn that off for right now. And the link might still appear anyway, even though I turned it off. And I exited out of that window. So I'm going to move on from Q&A, but I do recommend playing with that a bit, especially if you have students that are a little bit older. This might not be as successful with primary kids because there's a lot going on already on technology. But if you have sort of like middle grade kids or high school kids, then this would be a nice feature to use during class even. So I'm going to go over Google Meet briefly. I'm recording this video using Google Meet. And I think it's really important that you know that you can go through your Google apps here, right? And Meet is actually an app in Google. And if you haven't used it for recording, the screen, the home screen that I think you might have seen some of that bit, but I'll do this again. The home screen landing page of Google Meet actually looks something like this, and you join or start a meeting. So to start another meeting, you would join and you would need to put in a nickname. So maybe this is a conference with a student, right? So continue. It doesn't really matter what you name it. And then my camera's starting. I'm seeing myself again, right? And then I'm going to click join now. Okay. And when I click join now, this is what appears on the screen. And I can actually click these 3 dots. Now, the important thing about recording is, of course, you know that you should not be recording when there's a student present and their face is visible. But you click the 3 dots here, usually means more options in Google, right? It's a simplified sort of like gear tool, although I think the gear is already simplified. And I'll click record meeting to record in another meeting. Okay, so I'm going to X out of that tab and not exit out of my current tab. And I'm going to go back here. So Google Meet, if I want to join a meeting, essentially, I'm going to create that meeting for myself, and I'll be the only person there, and I will start recording. When you're ready, you need to click the 3 buttons again and stop recording. And your Meet recordings, wherever that is saved, you might have that question, like where does that go, that video file? It will save onto your drive in a Meet recordings folder. So that's really helpful too. And the folder will be called Meet recordings in your Google Drive. Okay. This is super helpful for student tutorials that you might want to go through, like this is how you fill out your assignment, or this is what I'm looking for. It's really helpful. Even just for general like reading things out loud to students. So this is one super simple way to record video. Google Classroom. We're going to go over how to make templates for students. This is a life-saving tool. In many cases, students don't know how to make a copy of a file and then upload it and do all those extra steps. So if you'd like to make a template for students, as you would maybe pass out a worksheet to them, you can actually upload it to your Google Classroom for them, and then they can just click on the file and they can go from there and fill it out. Okay, I'm going to go over some options for conferences. I know that having conferences in small groups can be more successful for many. And you can actually create an experience in Google Docs or Google Slides where students can sign up, or you can assign them time slots. And I'll show you an example of that. For feedback, I'm a writing teacher and a reading teacher, so feedback and writing can get a little bit cumbersome sometimes, where there'll be small errors in student writing, like not capitalizing a name, or things that are really quickly fixed and easily fixed. Not necessarily grammar rules and things, but just those very small errors. I found during remote learning that I was constantly trying to give feedback on the smallest things, like if this doesn't have a title and I need a title for a blog post. So there's a way to make that process more efficient that I'll show you, and it worked pretty well. And then assigning work in groups. I know that group work is a huge component of school a lot of the time. And not done all the time, but it is nice to have that option even online. And I know that our students might not be able to, be near each other, but we can still support them in doing group work even when they're socially distanced. So for Google Meet and Google Classroom, I do want to do a quick shout out that Google Classroom does allow you to generate a meeting link for students, so that they just need to go to your Google Classroom. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go to my classroom from last year. And so this was my classroom for the 2019-2020 school year. And it sort of collected a lot of items here, but I do want to show you that I can generate a Meet link. I can actually just click on this Meet button under classwork, and it brings me to a Google meeting. Now, I want to show you on the stream where the link is for students. So when students log into Google Classroom, the very first thing that they see is their stream. And that's done on purpose, because a lot of times you might put announcements on your stream in Google Classroom, and that's just kind of their landing page for whatever you're going to do. So to do this, what I did is I pressed the gear button, and then I actually scrolled down here until I saw Google Meet, and I made this link. I generated it, and I made it visible for students. An alternative, if you don't know if students can find that, is to email the link to them, but this is one less step for them. So essentially, when they go into their stream, they should be able to click the Meet link and join the meeting right away. I do want to say, though, that it's important to note that your students will not be able to meet on their own. Okay, so Google Meets does not have a waiting room like Zoom does currently. But if you post a link on your Google Classroom from Google Classroom, it's generated, they click on it, they won't be able to join without a teacher present. And that's all in their settings. They're set as a student user, so they're not able to sort of do whatever on a video meeting that you set up. So that's something you don't need to worry about, and I have highlighted that here. So the student view, I have shown that to you underneath here on the left-hand side. That the link sort of looks the same as the link that you would click on as a teacher, but you can find that under the Stream tab. Okay. I find that it's really important to train students as well in differentiating between the Stream and the Classwork tab, right? The Stream is sort of where I put announcements, or I put Zoom links, or, things that are quick updates. A lot of your assignments might show up there. But Classwork is something that I can organize, right? So I personally organized my Google Classroom by the week number that it was. And I put my assignments and things underneath each topic. So very briefly, I do want you to know, and this is in the Google Classroom guide that hopefully you have, you can create an assignment. A quiz assignment is really just a Google form. It will generate a Google form for you and assign to students. You can create a question, a material, or you can reuse a post. For many of you, something else that might help is, so say I wanted to go into my Google Classroom landing page. So I click on the app, right? And then I see Samboard ELA 2026, and I want to replicate that for this school year. And I don't want to have to build everything all again. I will click these 3 dots. Again, 3 dots in Google is more options. And I will click copy. And Google will actually make a whole copy of your entire classroom, obviously without adding all the students, but all the content will be there. And it's really super helpful to be able to kind of roll over a new classroom and still archive your old one. So I've got that for you. But that's another thing. So for Google Classroom, I was finding a lot of times in the spring, I was scrolling through all my assignments on my classwork page and clicking on the assignment and clicking on, the students that turned it in, and then grading it and then going back in and out. But there's actually a faster way to do that for teachers. And this is another Google update that has been launched for the fall. If you click, when you're in your Google Classroom, if you click next to your classroom's name, the 3 horizontal lines here, the main menu, there's an option to review, right? And if I click to review, it gives me a list of all my assignments, a quick list of everything in every classroom. So I just want to look at Samboard ELA for 2026. These are all of my assignments, right? And it says how many were assigned, it says how many were turned in, and how many I've graded, and I can just grade from this one landing page. So that's super helpful for teachers, especially if you're posting a little more often. I posted quite a few writing assignments to keep kids writing almost every day, but not an overwhelming amount. So this is helpful, so you don't have to just go back and forth and flip back and forth in your Google Classroom, right? So just to review that, this is on the 3 horizontal lines in the upper left-hand corner and under Teaching to review. And you will still need to select which class you would like to review work for. So that's super helpful for teachers going into the school year, especially if you have more students. For templates, the template is under the Create an Assignment tool in Google Classroom. So the template is actually something that you need to create. It's a file. It can be a Google Doc or it can be a Google Slides, right? So you would actually be creating a file. So for example, I'm going to show you my blog post number 1 template page, right? I assign blog posts to students over this time, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm actually going to show you, so I put here, this is the blog post title, and I put a box here that was just a 1-by-1 table that students would actually type into. And then I also had additional instructions. It's really nice if students can see all of their instructions in one place, and if they can be able to reference that while they're working on a document, right? So the template can be a nice option and a nice tool. What it looks like on the student side, so, well, actually on the teacher side, I'm going to go back to my classroom from last year and going to scroll down to blog posts, right? Let's see, where did they go? So I need blog posts. See, it's hard to endlessly scroll through your classroom if there's so much here. So blog posts, here they are. I'm going to go to blog post number 1. Okay. And so for me, this is what's popping up. So I wrote in kind of basic instructions for my assignment. I see that there are 25 graded, 14 turned in, and 8 assigned. And I did grade those other 14, but I need to click here on the turned in. And in that way, I can also click on the student assignment, see all the files are already there. There is nothing more frustrating than having students email you a file or share it on Google Drive, and then you can't find them. Essentially what this does, if you upload the assignment yourself and make a copy for each student, you are doing the same thing that you would be doing if you were copying a worksheet, right? And passing them out. It's the same format, it's the same template, and you can find it all in Google Classroom. Really, really helpful tool for you, so you're not hunting around for different student work. For conferences, we have Google Docs was something that I used personally. And what I did is because I teach 6th grade, had students actually sign up for their own conference, and I gave them days and time slots, and I had them fill their name out. And I did have that conference as part of a grade. So I had students fill their name out, and they were grouped with other students, and I actually embedded the Zoom link. We didn't use Google Meet at the time, but I embedded the Zoom link in their box. So all they had to do was go back to that Google document and click on their meeting link, and then they were all ready to go. So it's nice if you can have the conference links for students, especially if you have multiple conferences across multiple days. It's really helpful if the students just have one thing to go back to and like, oh yeah, my conference was on that thing, right? Instead of having to post and send out links, email and stream, and it's just easy for students to just go, yep, okay, that's what I need to do. That's where I need to be and when. And that's best case scenario. Hopefully they all show up for your meeting, but you can build those routines with students as well. So for group work, this is a little more complicated, but it is a step that you can take. So firstly, I would like to say that if you want students to work on the same file together, you must own the file, okay? You must own the file because you need to give them editing rights to the file. So I'll show you the process of this in Google Classroom. I don't know why I gave a process quotation marks. It's a legitimate process. So I'm going to click create an assignment, right? And I want to assign something to particular students. So group project poetry, right? So say I was assigning poetry. I'm going to add a file from my Google Drive, and I'm going to add my elements of poetry file. There's so many files popping up though. It should pop up really quickly if I type in poetry. There it is. Okay, so right now I have students can view file as an option here, but I actually want students can edit file instead of make a copy for each student. If I wanted students to complete this individually, I would make a copy for each student, but instead I'm going students can edit file. Okay, that's step number one. Step number two is I can actually go to this right sidebar here, and I can assign to specific students. So I'm going to uncheck all students and say I have Amanda and Andrea and Connor and Logan in one group. Okay, it's amazing. I picked all the kids from the same homeroom, and there are 48 kids listed there. Wow. So 4 students are selected there, and see, I can assign those specific students in Google Classroom, and they will all edit this file, and the file will already be there for me to view. There's no need to share with the teacher. There's no need for that extra step, but I can actually get 4 students editing that file, and only they can see their group project on Google Classroom. It won't appear for other students. So that's super helpful. I'm going to X out of here. I hope that made sense. I'm going to delete this draft, right? Again, the 3 dots. When in doubt, click the 3 dots on Google. So that's super helpful, but you must be the file owner again. So it's a little bit of file creating. If you want to just create a blank slide for students and assign that to them to build on, that's also super possible. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let me know. But again, make sure they can edit that file, and make sure that you select individual students. So for feedback, this was something I had touched on before, and this is really more geared toward writing teachers, I suppose. But I assigned several blog posts over remote learning, right? These were short blog posts, but they were frequent, and I was seeing a lot of small mistakes that were requirements in the assignment. So did they have a hyperlink? Did they have a photo? Did they have a title? Those were things that I was missing pretty consistently. And it was because it was new to students, but I wanted to give them quick feedback about, hey, so you actually still are missing this. And I didn't want to have to type all of that in their comments, because I would rather focus on their content than you need a title, you need a link. So this takes a little bit to build, actually, but if you build something for yourself like this, this is how I did it. So I made a Google Doc, and essentially I had their assignment title here. So all 6 blog posts that they were assigned for that unit, I had their name, and I checked off whether they had been all set with all those elements, right? So if they had all 3 elements I was looking for, I put a check. In this case, Addie was missing a link, okay? And this was a place of reference for all students to say, you know what, like I just need to add a link to blog post number 4, got it, right? This was not an indicator of what grade they had. These were just very small elements that I required that I just wanted them to quickly fix. So it was actually got positive feedback from many students about this. I called it Writing Lab. So if you're seeing these small errors, this is one way you can address them, especially with older students. Moving on to Google Calendar. You can add class calendars, you can create video meetings, and I'll go through that in my own video right now on Google Calendar. I'll share that screen with you like I have been. You can repeat events and you can help kids stay organized, right? So I'm going to pop over to Google Calendar right now, right? And so I have my week right here. I had some busy things this month, but the first thing I'd like to show you is how you can add your class calendars, right? You can add or hide other teachers' Google Classroom calendars, but adding a class calendar is something that you can only do if you are added as a teacher on another teacher's Google Classroom. So how do you do that? You go to People, the People tab. I'm sure you all already know this. And then you can click Invite Teachers, okay? That's also in your Google Classroom short guide. And when you invite teachers, that teacher has the option, if they go under classwork, to click Google Calendar, and they can add that to their Google Calendar. For me, the calendar already exists. So my Google Calendar for remote learning, oh goodness, I'm going to go back to March here, and I'm going to show you my Google Calendar, right, for remote learning. I have a bunch of others on my left sidebar here, and I'm going to uncheck those. I don't want to see those calendars, right? I only want to see Sambor ELA from March, okay? So I've got a couple of things on here. So these were some assignments that I had. This is directly from Google Classroom, okay? So I could see that, and if I really want to, I can go into Google Classroom and get a direct link to the assignment details, right? It's super simple, and it actually is available for students to use as well, as long as they go to the Classwork tab and click Google Calendar. And that can help students really organize themselves and know what's coming next, know what their load is during the week. Do they have a lot of math assignments in the beginning? Do they have English assignments throughout the week? Do they have science labs due at the end of the week? So that's a really helpful tool. As for creating video meetings, I'm going to show you that now, and I'm going to show you how to create a recurring event, right? So there are 2 ways to create an event on Google Calendar. One of those ways is to create using the plus create button, and I can just add something for August 18th today. So I'm going to add, GSuite, that's just the title of my event for right now. And I'm going to also add video conferencing. In most cases now, I think we're kind of moving more toward Google Meet, but if you are still using Zoom, it is an option still. So if I click add video conferencing, it will generate a link for me, and that's excellent. And then if I want to add guests, I would just need to start typing in emails and names. In some schools, they use Google Groups for students, and you might be able to type in a group in Google. So for example, I have grade 6, right? So I can invite my whole class to that link, right? I'm not going to because they are not starting school yet, and that's no longer my class. However, these are 18 kids. I'm going to remove them, but see how they're all appearing right here? And I can always edit that after. So I can see the guest list if I want to, but I'm going to exit out of that. And lastly, to make a recurring meeting, I'm going to go here and edit this time, right? So I see this highlighted in gray. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click does not repeat. And actually, maybe I want it to repeat every Tuesday, right? Maybe that's our class meeting. So I'm going to have it repeat every Tuesday. It is important, though, that I go into custom, and I click ends on, And I would hope that you would end these meetings and they wouldn't go on and on forever, right? So you should go back into custom and end your meetings on a certain date and then restart them again. So say I want to end these on November 17th, I'm going to press done. And now they should appear every Tuesday if I were to click save, which I'm not, but if I were to click save. I'm going to X out of here and I'm going to discard this and not save it. So I created a video meeting and I also repeated events. And I did mention keeping kids organized with Google Calendar. I think that's really helpful. So I did go over adding Google Classroom calendars, but quick things are that I would like you to know that to add another teacher's Google Calendar, you have to be part of their classroom already. And you have to go into their classroom manually and do that at first. And then again, reviewing creating video meetings, just make sure that you click that create button, you add video conferencing, whether it's Meet or Zoom, and you also add guests to your meeting. And if you add guests to your meeting, they can also access the video link, the conference link on their event, on their calendar. So they don't have to go and sift through a bunch of emails. It's great. And then again, I have this GIF here of how to create recurring meetings, custom, right? And then I will end it on a certain date. I do have this video for helping students stay organized.
A new tab for you, and I'm going to navigate to my own class through the students view. I end up at the stream, but I always like to remind students to go to the classwork tab. And I don't know if you've guessed it yet, but you are going to navigate to Google Calendar and click that button at the top of your classwork tab. When I click that button, it opens up a new tab. And when I open up that new tab, it asks me if I would like to add the calendar from that Google Classroom. And I'm going to click add. And when I do that, all of my assignments magically show up.
Okay, and then
you can print out individual assignments by
students can also use Google Calendar. It's really important to note that they can use Google Calendar as a digital tool. I also had several parents ask if there's a way to print out all of their assignments so they could put it up in the fridge or something, or just have a visual of everything at once. And you can print out all of your Google Calendar dates if you go into your Google Calendar. I won't show you that other video, but that video was made for students. If you go into the settings menu and press print, you're actually able to print out your month view. However, you can also go into a week view, go into settings, press print, and it will print for you in a week view. This is super helpful. And if students do end up adding teachers' Google Calendars from Classroom to their Google Calendar, this is a great integration. It's not a necessary tool, but it does help organize students when they're remote. For Google Slides, I have some exciting things. I think Google Slides is my all-time favorite Google app to use. It really is a versatile app. I have used it for virtual book talks where I have presented a book to students using audio clips. I've used it for students to create ebooks. I've also used it for Google Slide animations. I've used it for digital writers' notebooks. Google Slides is an excellent tool. So I'm going to click on my virtual book talk first so I can show you what's going on with that. So I read a book, Big Water by Andrea Curtis. Great read, by the way, if you like historical fiction. So students, when they saw this presentation, they were at this page here. And I'm going to show you how a student would react to it. So I have these little hands for clicking. I have audio here. You can see when I scroll over. So if I scroll over this audio clip, I can press play.
I was browsing through our SW48 Sora for a new book to read, and I came across this book by Andrea Curtis called Big Water. And it's actually about a...
Okay, so I gave a little bit of an intro to the book. I also have a clip of me reading parts of the book. I have also linked, you can add a hyperlink to a shape. Let me show you quickly. So this is actually a shape, but it's also a link, right? So if I were to click on that, I would see this as a student. So you can add other media, other websites to your Google Slides by adding a hyperlink. And so I did that by getting this image and adding the link with insert link. So you can essentially insert a link to any image, to any shape, and to any text on a Google slide. And it's very fun. It's a good way to engage the kids and create an interactive slideshow. Okay. I also added this video at the end. You can insert a video from YouTube, which is fun. And what that does actually, I know many of us have concerns about the YouTube app and the recommended videos that show up on the side or the advertisements. When you embed a video in a Google slide, what that does is it actually gets rid of the rest of the noise of the YouTube website. So that's a good tool to use. So yeah, the book talk was just 5 minutes of me talking about my book to my students. For student ebooks, again, this is kind of a student showcase of work, but also a practical use of Google Slides. So I had a student make an interactive ebook about Maya Angelou, and I'm going to present to go into the full interactive features here. And when I go into the table of contents, I see these shapes here. And you see how my cursor is changing when I go over the shapes? That's how you know it's an interactive link, of course. So maybe I want to go to what inspired her to be a poet. Maybe as a reader, I want to go to chapter 3. And then chapter 3, the student has inserted a video and inserted her own text. So I have this here. I also have another student who did his ebook project, but it looks slightly different, right? And I'm going to go into present mode and see what he did with his interactive slides. So not all of the slides have buttons, right? You can also make your text interactive. So maybe I want to look at his life in South Africa, right? And you can see that this student is adding more media by adding links in his slide. If I want to go back to the table of contents, I can just click table of contents and I arrive back there. For slide animations, I'll let you explore that, but essentially you can make animations with Google Slides. I could see physics teachers or science teachers making animations with students to explore the way things move around, and it's really fun. So essentially, when I click on this, students just went frame by frame using slides, and this is kind of what they ended up with. Right, I'm going to fast forward a little bit to 35. There we go. So they're causing shapes to move and change on the slides, and it's very fun. For digital notebooks, I've tried them in 2 different ways. I've tried them in portrait mode in Google Slides, and for me, it doesn't work quite as well because students have to zoom in and out. But if you do teach students to zoom in and out, I think it can work well. And I've tried a different digital notebook version. So I'll show you both. This was a student's from 2 years ago. And so I think it's really important to have students understand and for you to write your guidelines for using a digital notebook in the first place, right? Anytime you're in a digital space, you do need to make sure that you're always enforcing those digital rules, and so that students really take the digital space seriously. So I do have a writer's notebook, proper online use here. And then the student, so a student would navigate, and this is sort of a list of their assignments, right? Then they have a table of contents. They have their different drafts here. And I did do it on lined paper, but I didn't love it. I don't think that lined paper is necessary. But I was trying to replicate a real notebook. I'm going to X out of that. And this is the fresh digital notebook from last year. So I have this digital notebook, which actually incorporates different resources for different assignments. And I have a quick guide for Google Slides here, how students can copy and paste and things like that. And then I have an overview, and I have templates for different reading responses and things. So if they want to write a blog post about a book, they can, in this notebook, start writing right here in this box. And then the writing appears. Or maybe it doesn't because it's all dark right now. So let me fill color. Nope. So I'm going to go into more and then white. Okay. So in this way, students can actually write directly in the notebook and not have to worry about making anything extra. So that makes it easy for you to view as a teacher. It's getting a little long. I am going to wrap it up soon. I want to show you Jamboard, which is a nice app that you can use. So I'm going to actually open a new tab. I'm going to go to my Google Apps. I'm going to scroll until I see Jamboard right here. So when you open Jamboard, it actually has all of your files appear that you created. So I created this one to show you. And I want to show you different ways you could use it in different subject areas. So my background is in English. I would probably use this to go over different texts with my students. Jamboard essentially has some different tools on the side here. You can add a sticky note, make it a different color, or make it no color at all. You can also erase what you did. You can use a pen or a marker, a highlighter. So there's some different basic tools there. So if I wanted to write something right there, I could. And you can add an image. So it'll allow you to upload from Google Drive. It'll allow you to image search in Google, right? And you can also add different shapes, which is really excellent when you're trying to demonstrate different things for students. You could use this as a way to have a graphic organizer for students. You could use this as a way to demonstrate different concepts for students or have students build something together, and I'll get to that. You can also add a text box and start typing into it. And you can also add a laser pointer and it disappears. So you could circle something. You could say, what does this word family mean here in the context of the poem, right? So there are a lot of tools here, and you can share this, right? You can actually share this with groups of people. So you could technically share this with your class of students and have them all working on a Jamboard. And so essentially this is a whiteboard sort of feature that you can use to pull different elements into and have students build on or take notes on. This is the English slide. I also thought of history or social studies. You could look at different media, photos, cartoons. You could ask questions. You could have students add comments onto the screen there. For math, you could demonstrate different problems on your screen, which is also nice. I do like that they recently added this text box feature, so you don't have to write on the, on the board there. And then I also thought of science. You could use this for diagramming. You could use this for labeling things. You could use this for a ton of different things that I'm not even an expert in using, but these are just some ideas. So as you can see, I have 4 cards up here in my Jamboard. So in a way, it's like a presentation as well. If you click open on a Jamboard, you might be able to search other Jamboards that have been created at your school, which is pretty fun. You can change the background. There are some different options like black, the squares here, the grid lined, right, the dotted one. But this one was this one. So Jamboard is a tool that is really easy to use. It's sort of similar to the idea of Padlet, which is another tool some of you might be familiar with, but it is a Google app, which we do want to try to stick with Google Apps as much as possible because students already have those apps. You don't have to log in on a different third-party app. So the benefits is that you can collaborate on Jamboard and you can have real-time insight on what students are thinking and feeling and wondering what they're struggling with, maybe if it's a problem up on the board. But it's sort of that immediate feedback, which is sometimes missing. In fact, most times missing during remote learning unless you're video conferencing with a student. So it's a great way to engage them. I do have these short video demos. They're really GIFs of different tools, but I did show you that already. I do want to briefly touch on Google Drawings before I stop talking today. Google Drawings is something that many of you might not know about. If you type in your web browser, Google Drawings, it will take you to the Google Drawings app, right? It won't always appear in your general app base, and that's because it's more of an app that can be integrated on a Google Doc or on a Google slide. It's not an app on its own for whatever reason. So I have this essentially this blank canvas. I can change the background color. I can also change the size of my canvas. If I zoom out a little bit, I can show you. Goodness, zoom out. There we go. So I can make it, my canvas skinnier or larger. The major game changer for this is that you can also use the gray space around as a workspace. So let me show you what students have created and what you can create with students. You can create infographics. I've done this 2 years in a row with students and they quite enjoy it, although you do have to get them out of the mindset that everything is a rainbow color scheme and, the clashing colors, the neon colors. It's just not visually pleasing to the eye. So you can even work with an art teacher or another visual teacher on the color scheme, the color palette. You can create game boards. You can create map activities where you insert a picture of a map and students are labeling it. Although I think now you could use that with Jamboard. You can create puzzles as well for students to drag and drop things, which again, I think you could use Jamboard. So there are some pros and cons to using Google Drawings because many of those features are now in Jamboard. These are some student infographics that were made. These are cut off a bit because they were a bit longer than the actual slide, and I wanted you to be able to see it. Right, so these are zoomed in versions and zoomed out versions. So students were able to create their own inspired posters anyway with Google Drawings. And the nice part is when you're done with your drawing, you can click File, Download, and download as a PNG file, which is a very high quality image file. And you can actually post the image file on their website. In fact, when we made our writing portfolios, it helped me to build their portfolios that I had the image files, right? So we want to click on this student. And so she made that poster about our book on Google Drawings, and she also made this infographic. And I was able to insert that as a photo, which was great. Lastly, I would like to say that there are some resources I'd like you to be aware of. I'm going to be updating my YouTube channel still. I do make short tutorials for teachers. They're not all like an hour long. In fact, I try to make them 10 minutes or less or 15 minutes or less. And I don't just know all this information. I do follow a lot of blogs. I do follow people on Instagram, and I do follow podcasts about technology. And these are some blogs and technology resources that I would recommend. Okay. 2 of these are Instagram and a few of these are podcasts. I also have some book recommendations. A lot of times teachers that teach younger kids feel that they can't use the technology as much. And this book, Google Apps for Littles, is excellent and gives you some great strategies. I myself don't teach younger kids. I teach middle school. So I don't have a lot of experience there, but I did read this book and I thought the ideas were very strong. For classroom management in the digital age, it is, again, a big piece to set those expectations for technology. And the HyperDoc handbook is nice because it shows you how to make these hyperlinked documents for students to access, sort of like a blog post. Other apps I would recommend for teachers is a GIF creator. This is like a next step sort of thing. You might have seen the moving GIFs in my presentation. I made it with that GIF creator, Giazo GIF. Adobe Spark is something that I use to make my video thumbnails for YouTube. The video thumbnail is the image that you see when the video is on the sidebar, right? So it might say how to blah, blah, blah on the video instead of taking a still of you. Screencastify is an alternative, of course. I know some teachers have used that and feel more comfortable with using it. Animatica is something I use to edit all my videos. I download it onto my computer. Padlet is like Jamboard, but it's a third-party app, but it is useful. And Google Chat is something that can be used to talk with teacher teams. It's actually in the sidebar of your Gmail, and that's something you can explore. And I do check this quite often. These are the upcoming GSuite releases. It's a very nerdy thing to do. So I have, right, I can see actually all the Google Meet releases, right? And whether or not they're launched or not. So I have Jamboard. See, there's a lot coming to us in the fall from Google that they're still developing, which is great. And I do have this link to this presentation that you should be able to access. Thank you so much for your time today. And I apologize that I was not able to be there in person, but I do have this video and hopefully this helps all of you. Please feel free to reach out to me at any point in the school year. I would be happy to work with any of you. And I would be happy to video conference with any of you to sort of help you troubleshoot what's going on, or if you have questions after this presentation. Thank you so much, and I hope the rest of your day goes well. And thank you for having me virtually. Bye.